Welcome to the Money Runner. I'm David Nelson. We've had a rough start to the year, no question. 2022, markets have had all sorts of challenges for sure. And we've touched on a lot of them on this very pod. Inflation, supply chains breaking down, a political divide that prevents just about anything from getting accomplished, and of course, a war in Ukraine that doesn't look to end anytime soon. At the heart of it has been oil and energy, always the wild card for this market. It's a major driver of inflation expectations. It's down hard today, down almost $8, below $100 for the first time in quite some time, but for all the wrong reasons. I think a lot of Americans understand that we're likely in recession already. As a matter of fact, on Friday, the Atlanta Fed actually put out a report showing that they expect this quarter to come in at minus 2.1%. You add that to the last quarter of minus 1.1%. That's 2 quarters in a row, ladies and gentlemen. That's a recession. I think from an energy standpoint, the heart of the problem, a series of mistakes by this administration and the unintended consequences that come with it has put our energy security in doubt. Add the fact that sanctions on Russia still haven't altered Putin's behavior. I think the potential for significantly higher prices sometime later in the year for crude and, of course, gas are a real possibility. Last week, 2 analysts out of JP Morgan put forth a scenario most hadn't considered. I certainly never thought of it. I'm an analyst, and I know a lot of my friends and colleagues weren't thinking this way at all. If it came to pass, it could trigger a black swan event. Now, I'll be the first to admit, a black swan event by definition is almost unpredictable. But these 2 analysts, Natasha Kaneva, by the way, Natasha Kaneva, that's a Russian name. So since we're talking about Russia, we might have to explore that. And Ted Hall, in a note to their JP Morgan clients last week, explored the possibility of a retaliatory move by Russia to cut production of oil by 3 million barrels per day. If that happened, the end result could lead to a $180 Brent crude price. A cut of 5 million barrels a day would lead to an intolerable $380 price tag. Now, look, I'll be the first to admit these are 2 analysts, 1 team, but it's clear there's a gaping hole in our efforts to contain the Russian bear. India and China right now, they're buying up all the Russian crude they can and very happy to get the discount. And it's quite a bit. It's probably about $32 a barrel they're saving right now. All right, let me pivot back to Ukraine for a second because it's part of the thesis and a big part of where I'm going. Over the weekend, we found out that Russia appeared to have shored up their control of the eastern region of Ukraine. Now, this is the Donbass region of Ukraine, and for those who've studied it, and I'm certainly not an expert on Ukraine, that's where a lot of ethnic Russians live, and many of them have more allegiance to Moscow than maybe to Kiev. Zelensky and their troops, and certainly the rest of Ukraine, seem secure, although attacks seem to go daily. I think this entire event, the one thing it has done, is it's likely pulled the United States and our allies closer together, to be sure for that. And now NATO is about to add 2 new members, Sweden and Finland. Adding Finland a year ago, that would have been almost unthinkable. However, the lack of strategic planning in front of this invasion has laid bare NATO's failure. At the start, there were 3 possible paths. First, a diplomatic approach, always the best choice. Maybe similar to what Kennedy negotiated with Khrushchev during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Back then, and I remember that, I was just a kid, we came to the brink of nuclear war. I remember watching my parents in front of the TV set, maybe Walter Cronkite, watching Russian ships head toward a U.S. blockade of Cuba, where the United States had discovered Soviet missiles on that island. For the United States, it was pretty serious. Remember, Cuba is just 90 miles offshore from Miami. So the idea of Soviet missiles so close to our mainland wasn't going to be tolerated. The question was, who was going to blink first? On day 13, we got that answer. Nikita Khrushchev sent the following message to the United States: I have given a new order to dismantle the arms which you described as offensive and to crate and return them to the Soviet Union. What wasn't known at that time was Kennedy had promised Khrushchev that if he backed down in public, he would remove Jupiter missiles from Turkey, a security concern for the Soviet Union. All right, fast forward to today and back to Ukraine. A lot of this was about NATO membership. NATO membership was a known trigger for this tyrant. Our own intelligence officials for years were aware that this was their red line. Obama knew it, Bush knew it, Trump knew it, and of course Biden knew it. If NATO membership for Ukraine was not going to be protected, it should never have been offered. The second path was, of course, NATO stepping up and flooding Ukraine with military support prior to an invasion. That's the operative word here, prior to the invasion. Most of the money and hardware was given after Russian troops were well entrenched in the country. And as for the United States, by signaling that U.S. troops would never be an option before the conflict had started, you lose strategic ambiguity. Putin knew he had a green light before it even started. Well, what happened was this. The U.S. and NATO went with option 3. A massive set of economic sanctions designed to cripple Putin and the Russian economy, along with billions in military and economic support for Ukraine and its people. And this seemed like a home run right at the start. I was one of the first ones to come out and be in support of it. And it looks like I was wrong. You know, when I watched the Russian ruble disintegrate, it looked like their economy would collapse. And initially, a lot of countries weren't buying their oil. Even corporate America stepped up here. They started to sever ties with Russia, ending projects and business lines and relationships established for decades, and it cost billions to get out of there. Unfortunately, there are enough bad actors in the world, like India, like China, very happy to support a brazen dictator as long as they can save a few dollars. And that's exactly what happened. Modi and Xi have been buying up the oil, and Putin is cashing the checks. I think the point is there were options, all right? The two best choices were always, of course, diplomacy. But if that doesn't yield an acceptable outcome, and maybe it wouldn't have in this instance, you know, move strategically before the event. Anything else puts you at a disadvantage. Now what we're left with, we're fighting a proxy war where there's no end in sight. Now, I'll admit, Ukraine and what's likely to follow, it's not the only problem here. We're dealing with a lot of issues. We have a born-again Fed that is trying to stamp out inflation, and that's likely leading to a lot of economic chaos at this point, right? And we're seeing it play out in the marketplace. Today was a good day. The market seemed to come back pretty hard and even crawled into positive territory off of a pretty weak start. Pretty heavy calendar for the week. We've got the FOMC minutes on Wednesday. And of course, the all-important non-farm payrolls on Friday. Let's see if jobs are still holding up in this country. That could be the Achilles heel here. All right, that's it for me. I'll be back again next week. Thanks for joining. I'm David Nelson.